Here we go. These points, following them, placing them, excuse me, side by side, shows the truth of Paul's words. Acts chapter is listed. 1. Peter's work began with the Holy Spirit. That is Acts chapter 2. Paul's work began with the Holy Spirit. That is Acts chapter 13. 2. Peter was thought to be drunk and then explains himself in Acts chapter 2. Everybody remember that? 2. Paul was thought to be mad and then explains himself. That's Acts chapter 26. 3. Peter's first sermon begins a new section of the book. That's Acts chapter 2. 3. Paul's first sermon begins a new section of the book. It's Acts chapter 13. 4. Peter has a time of work, preaching, and then persecution. Acts 2 through 11. Paul has a time of work, preaching, and then persecution. That's Acts 13 through 19. 5. Peter has trouble after healing a man lame from birth. Acts chapter 3. 5. Paul has trouble after healing a man lame from birth. That's Acts chapter 14. 6. Peter says, silver and gold I have none. Acts chapter 3. 6. Paul says, I have coveted no one's silver and gold. That's Acts chapter 20. 7. Peter's shadow heals people. Acts chapter 5. 7. Paul's handkerchief heals people. Acts chapter 19. 8. Peter is arrested in the temple and taken to the Sanhedrin. Acts chapter 4 and 5. 8. Paul is arrested in the temple and taken to the Sanhedrin. Acts chapters 21 through 23. 9. Peter confronts Simon the sorcerer. Acts chapter 8. 9. Paul confronts Elymas the sorcerer. Acts chapter 13. 10. Peter performs an exorcism. Acts chapter 5. 10. Paul performs an exorcism. That's Acts chapter 16. 11. Peter raises Tabitha from the dead. Acts chapter 9. 11. Paul raises Eutychus. Very close. He said Eustace. That's a guy in Alabama. Eutychus from the dead. Acts chapter 20. 12. Peter lays hands for the reception of the Spirit. Acts chapter 8, the Samaritans. 12. Paul lays hands for the reception of the Spirit. Acts chapter 19. 13. Peter is worshipped. Acts chapter 10. 13. Paul is worshipped. Acts chapter 14. Where was that? Laodiceia, right? Remember the Laodiceans and the language? Okay. Anyway, 14. Peter imprisoned with a miraculous escape. Acts chapter 12. 14. Paul is imprisoned with a miraculous escape. Acts 16. 15. An angel stood by Peter. Acts chapter 12. 15. Angel stood by Paul. Acts chapter 27. 16. Peter called by vision to preach in Caesarea. Acts chapter 10 with the house of Cornelius. Paul called by vision to preach in Macedonia. Correct. 16. 17. Peter's success brings Jewish jealousy. Acts chapter 5. 17. Paul's success brings Jewish jealousy. Acts chapter 13. 18. Peter heals the bedridden Aeneas. That's Acts chapter 9. Paul heals the bedridden father of Publius. Very good. Acts chapter 28. 19. Peter ordains deacons. Acts chapter 6. 19. Paul ordains elders. Acts chapter 14. 20. Peter is filled, quote, with the Spirit, quote. Acts chapter 4. 20. Paul is, quote, filled with the Spirit, quote. 13. Okay, and then Peter is twice called the apostle to the Jews. Paul is 4 times called the apostle to the Gentiles. Now, I don't know if that's all the patterns. Those are the ones that some were alerted to me by a teacher in Southern Evangelical Seminary. Some of them I found.